In a game as large and complex as Destiny 2, one of the simplest yet largest systems in the game is weapon crafting. Currently there are 78 craftable weapons, 67 of which come from specific activities, the rest being exotic, world drop weapons, or game through a quest. Today, we're going to take a look at the craftable weapons that existed in Season 16, with Throne World activities, Wellspring, Season of the Risen content, and the Vow of the Disciple raid. All of my lists are ranked best to worst. First, starting off with the Throne World activity pool, we have, in my personal ranking at best to worst, Likely Suspect, the Void Rapid Fusion, Red Herring, the Void Adaptive Rocket, Empirical Evidence, the Kinetic Aggressive 2-burst Sidearm, Forensic Nightmare, the Stasis 600 SMG, and finally Pointed Inquiry, the Void 150 Scout. Starting with Likely Suspect, this weapon early in Season 16 was a beast. Being the first fusion that we got our hands on through crafting, this weapon saw its maximum potency nearly immediately, given its wonderful perk pool for both PvE and PvP activities. For PvE, this thing has combinations like Stats 1 for All, Perpetual Motion Golden Tricorn, or even Heating Up Wellspring if you're so inclined. Off the bat, fusion rifles already chew through enemy health bars, rapids especially. Such easy damage buffs to proc on fusions like 1 for All or Golden Tricorn are going to turn this gun into a handheld microwave, more than it already was. For PvP anymore, we're most likely looking at Firmly Planted in the third slot, for better stability on slides. Ironic given this thing rolls sideways. And it also rolls Adagio in the fourth slot. When this thing first dropped, you could run successful warm-up and keep chaining those insanely fast TTKs, but with the nerf rapids received semi-recently, this isn't really an option anymore. Next up, we've got Red Herring, the Adaptive Rocket. Come Lightfall, this might be one of the best standalone DPS options if we see either a reserves or damage buff for rockets. Given field prep in the third slot along with lasting impression in the fourth slot, it's pretty simple. It's just a workhorse rocket with decent perks. Coming in at number 3 we have Empirical Evidence, the 325 Sidearm. This thing packs quite the punch in PvP, with some casual options for PvE sidearm usage. For PvE, we've got combinations such as Encore Swashbuckler or Perpetual Motion Harmony. If you're into Adagio, Unrelenting, or Wellspring in the fourth column, go for those two, they're pretty decent. Speaking of Adagio, it's probably the highest recommended perk I've seen by sidearm enthusiasts for PvP. That along with Tunnel Vision, Encore, Perpetual, and you've got a really good feeling sidearm that melts ads faster than a stick of butter you left in your pocket. I guess it's time to talk about Forensic Nightmare. Given this thing's status as a kinetic slot 600 SMG, you'd figure that since we've had potent picks we can't obtain anymore for the energy slot, such as Shire's Wrath, we'd be longing for different combinations out of this thing to help fill that desire for either replacement or simply just something different, but given this thing's current zoom of 13 being bumped up to 14 in the nearby future, this isn't anything to write home about. Although precision SMGs aren't usually that popular in PvE, this thing still has Grave Robber Swashbuckler, Encore Headstone, or even Perpetual Motion Harmony. Moving on to PvP, this thing has some pretty standard roles like Heating Up or Perpetual Motion with Kill Clip, with options for Under Pressure and Slideways in the third slot, and Harmony for the fourth. Lastly, we've got Pointed Inquiry, the 150 Void Scout. Off the bat, we have modern options with more impressive perk pools like Doom Chelchis, or even classic bangers like Vouchsafe that do the job this thing tries to, being a long-range prodding option for your endgame or even a mapping tool for PvP. For PvE, it's not bad, with options such as Force Times the Charm or Genesis in the third slot, as well as Dragonfly or Focus Fury in the fourth. For PvP, I guess we're going with Firmly Planted in the third slot and Focus Fury in the fourth. All in all, not a bad weapon collection for such an easy set of activities to farm weapons from, with solid options for mid-game PvE and a couple for PvP. Next, we talk about the Wellspring collection. Ah yes, everyone's favorite grind for hours to craft this aggressively mid-gun activity. In order, we've got Fel Taradiddle, the Kinetic Lightweight Bow, Coming to Pass, the 360 Arc Auto, Tarnation, the Arc Ravid Heavy GL, and Father's Sins, the Void Rapid Sniper. Starting with what's probably, although I'm not very certain, the best option, we have Fel Taradiddle. I know, putting a bow first isn't usually the play for a lot of collections, but this thing, although it seems like a standard affair, it's a pretty decent little needler. For PvE, we've got the classic combo of Archer's Tempo and Explosive Head, but we've also got a novel combo of Stats 1 for All. For PvP, if you're so adventurous to use a lightweight bow, I'd go Rangefinder Explosive. Next on the list, we've got Come to Pass, the 360 Arc Auto. For how much of these types of guns we don't see in any meaningful way in either PvE or PvP, this gun feels like a sleeper pick in the right hands. This thing has plenty of PvE combinations like Triple Tap Dragonfly, Genesis Adaptive Munitions, Stats 1 for All, my personal favorite, or even something as simple as Perpetual Motion Golden Tricorn. That last roll, by the way, is probably what I'd suggest for PvP as well, seeing as this thing is a ranged monster and will most likely make you forget that you're supposed to miss when you take damage. Ah boy, we've run into a heavy GL next, and I'm just going to say my piece on GLs in the current sandbox. These things either need a hefty damage buff or an equally hefty reserves buff, maybe even a combination of the two to be good. That said, this thing doesn't even roll proper damage perks, and being a rapid won't really be useful for PvP either. I assume you'll want Killing Wound with Danger Zone or Chain Reaction for ad clear, but again, heavy GL, not a lot of ammo, really not enough damage either. After that scathing review, you might wonder how a sniper landed lower than that, but Father Sins is a rapid sniper. Rapids haven't been popular for years, having a lot of recoil and not really enough damage to justify it. That said, this thing has some okay combos like triple tap Focus Fury for PvE, or Under Pressure Snapshot for PvP. All these weapons are aggressively mid, and I assume if you're getting these it's for the exotic glaives, or you're a collection not like I am. The second most interesting collection is up next in the Risen collection. Plenty of PvP options sprinkled with PvE hotness. Up on the roster we have Thoughtless, the 90 RPM Stasis Sniper, Explosive Personality, the Solar Waveframe GL, Peace of Mind, the 540 Kinetic Pulse, Sweet Sorrow, the 720 Arc Auto Rifle, Under Your Skin, the Precision Void Bow, and finally Recurrent Impact, the 900 Rapidfire MG. Oh man, when we talk about good feeling snipers, there's none quite like Thoughtless for that kinetic slot. Overflow or Rapid hit with Focus Fury or Firing Line for PvE, and hey, if you really feel it, Overflow is not a bad option for PvP either, but Firmly Planted or Perpetual will probably do you better, pairing with Quick Draw or Snapshot. Solid gun for faraway targets that need shooting in the face. Explosive Personality is one of those weapons that seems to fit into just about any build, helping clear up to double-digit counts of adds if they're lined up just right. Plenty of options for PvE here with Genesis, Threat Detector, Field Prep, Feeding Frenzy, Stats for all, and Autoloading. Yes, I just listed every third slot perk. My suggestions alongside literally any of those are One for All for beefier targets, or even Golden Tricorn just to make things simpler. For PvP, I've seen people use Disruption Break to melt people with their primary after priming. Take your pick for what feels right in the third slot. Peace of Mind dropped very, very hot in Season 16, becoming an instant classic. 540 Pulse Rifles do quite the job flinching and overall melting your opponents. For such situations, I recommend Perpetual Motion or Heating Up with Moving Target. For PvE, you've got endgame options like Overall with Vorpal or Focus Fury. Sweet Sorrow is one of those guns that somewhat surprised me out of the box. Not a lot of people use auto rifles nowadays for ad clear, but this one's a proper good time and it can suit desires pretty well. PvE options include Stats, One for All, or Perpetual Golden Tricorn. Some off-meta auto users in PvP enjoy things like Pulse Monitor or Killing Wind in the third slot and Tap the Trigger or Vorpal in the fourth. Under Your Skin is one of those weapons that takes some time getting used to, especially if you're not a regular needler using bows all the time, but given what this thing's capable of, if bows are in the artifact, it's a decent choice for that energy slot. It's got the classic combo of Archer's Tempo and Explosive Head, but if you're feeling adventurous, you could try out Dragonfly or even Successful Warm-Up for an instant Legolas button. PvP madmen can find plenty of use in Firmly Planted or Hipfire Grip in the third slot and Opening Shot in the fourth. It's sad to say, but I think Recurrent Impact, although good, is the most underwhelming choice out of these weapons, but only for the archetype and not really for much else. The thing does have a plethora of PvE clearing options though, and Field Prep, Stats for All, Perpetual Motion, and Subsistence in the third slot, as well as Firing Line, Headstone, One for All, and Frenzy in the fourth. I really wouldn't suggest using this recoil machine for PvP, but just in case, there's Firmly Planted and Tap the Trigger. Well, here we are, last collection of the video, and almost certainly the most potent. This arsenal of heavy hitters was very well designed and possibly power crept to hell, but hey, I'm here for the power fantasy and raw fun some of these Vow guns can provide to you. Rounding it out, we have Cataclysmic, the Solar Precision Linear, Forbearance, the Arc Waveframe GL, Submission, the Kinetic Lightweight SMG, Lubrae's Ruin, the Solar Glaive, Insidious, the Arc Aggressive Forward Burst Pulse, and Deliverance, the Stasis Precision Fusion. I've gotta say, this is probably one of the most powerful DPS weapons as our frontrunner for this collection, having entire videos dedicated to figuring out which combination of perks is the most broken for achieving optimal damage. With reputation such as that, we have to talk about what this thing does well. This thing has insane ammo economy, having 4 times in the third slot, effectively doubling how many rounds you have, given you play your cards right. Focus Fury is the easier of the 2 best in slot perks for the 4 slot to use, but Bait and Switch is really built for those that like using a lot of guns all at once and rewarding you for it. This thing really isn't that notable for PvP, but its reputation and effectiveness in PvE more than makes up for that. Moving on to another absolute PvE endgame staple, we have Forbearance. My, this gun can turn a well-rounded fortress into a spectacular light show in seconds. The combination most people use is Ambitious Assassin Chain Reaction for clearing room and having more rounds for the next room ready to go. Like I said, this thing will clear any room in the blink of an eye, and watching enemies melt into a light blue electric haze is one of the best feelings the game has to offer. Next up, we have my favorite workhorse SMG in Submission. By favorite, I mean that I've leveled this thing to over 500 because I enjoyed the raw pleasantry this gun had to offer whenever I grazed its trigger. Seriously, this thing comes out the gate with 100 recoil direction, making this thing straighter than the 1950s. For PvE, I suggest Perpetual or Encore with Swashbuckler or Frenzy. For PvP, I suggest Similar, with Harmony being an option for those who are using special weapons frequently. Lubrae is one of those weapons that can do just about anything if you ask it politely. In Gambit, this thing will allow you to clear a side in less than 15 seconds if you aim somewhat in the correct direction by melee alone. The clear winning combo for me is Grave Robber Swashbuckler, with Surrounded being an option for close encounters. If those aren't quite cutting it, you've got Vorpal, Unstoppable Force, or even Unrelenting as other options. Glaives historically aren't PvP weapons, so we're going to move on. Just because Insidious is low on the list does not mean it's a slacker. Dragonfly in the 3rd slot means that you can very easily use it to clean the floor from range. Pair that with One For All and you've just shouldered a portable mid to long range death box. For PvP, I could easily see Rapid Hitter heating up with Rampage or Vorpal. Deliverance isn't the lowest on this list because it's bad, quite the opposite really. It's really good at what it does, but it only has a couple of specific uses such as building it with Demolitionist Chill Clip for Stasis Warlock Grenade Spam. This thing will turn a line of Thrall into 60% of your grenade energy in only one shot. If you want a precision tool to Voop with in PvP, this can be very easily equipped with heating up in your choice of Tap the Trigger, Harmony, or Successful Warm-Up. That finishes out our Season 16 Craftable collections. Gotta say, plenty of potent weapons for newer returning players. Right from easiest to least to get, I'd say the Throne World weapons are easiest to get, but heavily reliant on RNG, with Wellspring and Risen coming in 2nd and 3rd, with the Vow collection being the hardest but best collection. Seriously, if Vow's the rotator rate, find some people, run it through, maybe farm for a couple of these things, you really won't regret it. That does it for this video. If you found this video informative, drop a like and a subscribe to show that you want more of these. If you have anything special to share about these weapons or your personal rankings, put them down below in the comments and help boost engagement. Anyway, appreciate you. Have a good one.